Hi, guys. Hi, welcome. Today's another daytime episode. We all have stuff. Welcome. We love
Love
this.
the daytime. And daylight savings is coming, so we're excited.
Okay, so our suffering is soon to be over. We love that.
Thank gosh.
Okay, so we are making headway with our trauma series, and we've really enjoyed going through it with you guys and talking about all of the ins and outs of trauma. So today we've got just a very specific type of trauma. We're going to talk about betrayal trauma and what that is, who it can happen to, who it happens by, what it means, what it looks like, why it's so pervasive. Um, yeah, this is a big one. So, if you have someone who comes to therapy and they're explaining that they have issues with a relationship, for example, that they feel there's been a fracture in the relationship and it's a trust based issue, this is something that we might see and eventually label as betrayal trauma. What would you explain to someone who comes into your office if this is a suspicion that you have that this is where their symptoms are coming from? How would you talk them through that?
I think that's a hard question for me. Because what I was gonna say when you first started, I was thinking was betrayal and just trust are just this hand in hand thing. So it's like
Hmm. Yeah.
any type of breaking trust.
Hmm.
I think there's a whole thing about that in general because it can come in multiple ways. Is just like a form of betrayal. I think it's
Yeah.
really hard because we all are humans wanting connection. So when you're betrayed by somebody or you break a trust, it's like
Yeah.
this heart wrenching, oh my God moment. Because a lot of times betrayal is blindsided, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends. So I guess either you give me more information or how you would do it. Because I think for me, it depends on what the dynamic is and where it's
Yeah.
going out for this person.
Sure. So when it comes to this particular type of trauma wound, we most often see these in a dynamic where there's some dependence of the victim or whoever is going through it and the person who creates that trauma. There's usually a need for trust, for care, or there's some type of survival mechanism in place. So that can look like a caregiver, for example, abusing or abandoning a child or someone that they're taking care of. It can come in the form of like infidelity. Basically, we're creating an attachment wound where you have a relationship with someone. Attachment is very dependent on closeness, it's dependent on trust, it's dependent on survival mechanisms. And at some point, there is a break in there where the person who is the victim of the situation feels like they cannot rely on that other person for survival or care.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So I think that more often though we see this in cases of parent child or in a partner relationship where there's some type of infidelity. So, you know, it's also really difficult, I feel like, to explain to someone what you're going through is betrayal, right? Because I feel like that is a very strong word that a lot of people don't grasp fully. Like, oh, that's what happened to me.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
I
it kind
think
of
like
gives me,
what'd you say?
it's like, it's an icky feeling. It gives me ick to be like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I was,
I think it's
right?
icky because I mean what you're talking about, like when you even mentioned attachment, yeah, I think that's everything that's involved in attachment, right? Like
Yeah.
I get close to you. I think the sad reality of getting close to people is there's always you never know what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
That's why people struggle with vulnerability. It's like if you've been vulnerable or you are like, oh, this relationship is super deep, we're super close, and then somebody does something that either shocks you, surprises you, hurts you so deeply. It's like how
Yeah.
could this person do this to me because we were so close or I thought we were so close or like what you said even going back. I don't think kids think about it logically like that, but it's like, when you're a kid, the only people that you really lean on and fully trust are mom and dad, right? Like mom and dad are like all you know. So
Yeah.
to be fully abandoned or hurt by a parent is
Mhm.
like setting you up to be like, oh,
Yeah.
people betray you. Like
Right.
people have these attachments to you, but are they trustworthy?
Right. Yeah, I think when you're mentioning that type of relationship, it's also something that it is a relationship that should nurture your sense of safety and security. And what happens often as a byproduct of your safety and security being in jeopardy is that you're also sort of detached from what your reality looks like now. It's like, well, now I'm in survival mode. I don't really know how to go on from here. I don't trust people. I always have a guard up. And it is a distorted kind of way of going about new relationships and establishing trust because now you don't really have a good understanding of what does safety look like in a caregiving relationship? What does safety look like in an intimate partner relationship? Because those things have been so distorted by this betrayal, which is often accompanied by all of the horrible things, right? The lying and the gaslighting and the manipulating. That what's normal? That's why it is so traumatic for a lot of people. And it's one of those things I think that when you have someone who's recovering from a breakup or a really toxic relationship with a parent or caregiver, it's almost painful for them to acknowledge that, like, yeah, I was abandoned. I was rejected. I don't like to say that, but like that's what happened to me because that is the reality. That they sometimes have shame that comes with, well, I don't really know what a normal like parent is because I was left alone. I was abandoned. I was used as ammunition towards my other parent. I was collateral in a lot of family dynamics. So it's hard.
Right.
It's hard to like explain that and kind of couch that in a session. I actually had a client that this came up with a couple weeks ago where I was like, do you think that maybe the reason you're struggling with this breakup is because you're kind of traumatized by it? Like, it's not a chronic trauma, but like it happened and it really sucked
Right.
the way it happened. And she said, oh, yeah, I kind of guess so. Like the intrusive, obsessive thought loops were happening. And there was no amount of redirection and thought restructuring and challenging that was working.
Yeah. So then I guess my question to you is, what are we doing with that? Because like so many of our clients come in and they're like, okay, cool, Lesia, I've been betrayed. I have betrayal trauma. People have hurt me, betrayed me multiple times. Now what? Like, how do I heal with that?
Well, number one, I think it's important to get someone out of their cognitive logical mind. Because, like we've talked about, and we're going to say this until we're blue in the face, there is no logical part of trauma recovery. There's no cognitive piece that will do 100% of the recovery work. You'll get there, but we can't start out by saying, okay, well, you know that you didn't deserve for that to happen, so let's challenge that. The emotional part is so strong and the body response is also so strong that we need to kind of play the tape and feel the feelings and work through what has this created in your life that now feels familiar that is not serving you, right? You've been abandoned by a caregiver. Is that a relationship that you care to repair? Yes or no? Are there relationships in your life that feel familiar when you explore those feelings that you had in that period of your time? Yes or no? What are the behaviors that you are utilizing as protective that are actually disruptive to your ability to recover? And look at it piece by piece. I mean, it's a psychological wound that is so pervasive because attachment is it's basically reflexive. That's one of the first things that happens to a human, to an animal. We attach to someone, and that determines how we attach to others in the future.
Yeah.
So,
And I love when you say, because clearly we always do say that, which is, how do you get out of your head and get in your body? Because your body's the thing that's responding, right? So it's like, I think a lot of the hard work around this kind of stuff, just like all of the trauma series that we're doing is,
yeah.
that's why I know our therapy approaches are different, but that's why we do in the therapy I use for trauma. It's like a lot of the imagination techniques because
Yeah.
you're trying to normal, like what you said, like what do you know things look like? Well, you have to have a mapping for that. Like how do you draw it out and have somebody be like, what would that feel like? Like even though it's not your reality, what do you like if we draw the picture out, what would it feel like to have an ideal caregiver or somebody who didn't betray you or didn't abandon you. Like usually
Yeah.
people are like, oh, that's foreign because if it's your reality, it's foreign. But if you start drawing them the picture, just like we kind of talked about, I think in the like abusive relationships, it's like
Yeah.
when you're in something for so long, you think it's normal, but like, how do you draw the
Mm.
picture of like what healthily can this look like? And
Yeah.
how would my body feel in that to kind of combat the reality of what happened to you? And I think that's hard because
Hmm.
people are always like, well, what if it happens again? And that's something you can't control, but it's
Right.
you can know what to look for more or what it should feel like. So when it feels off, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe this
Right.
isn't safe for me. But I will say, I think it's hard. At least, I say this on every episode. Like when we even said betrayal at the beginning, I'm like, there's just such a range of.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we get betrayed. So what we're talking about is like trauma, betrayal,
Mm.
traumatized, where I do think a lot of relationships betray us in a way. Like people let us
Sure.
down, you know? So what's the
Yeah.
difference between hey, like my friend surprised me because she lied to me about something and I feel
Right.
betrayed versus, oh, one of my friends slept with my husband. Like,
Hmm.
we're talking about like levels here. Like, is something forgivable? Like, okay, Gabby, why did you lie about what you did this weekend? And you're like, hey, sorry, Alessia, like I was in my own world and I just really didn't feel like talking and telling you where I was. And I might be like, forgivable. Like, I feel a little
Yeah.
betrayed. Like, why would Gabby lie to me? Like, that's weird, but it's not on a scale where I'm like feeling
Hmm.
traumatized. But
Right.
it's just like I feel a little bit betrayed versus
Yeah.
you sleep with my fucking husband and me and you are best friends. You're like, how do I trust a friend again? Right?
Right.
Like, I didn't know that could exist. So we're talking about like scales and levels to betrayal and what can be forgiven and help easier to move on from versus things that are like, oh, I'm going to carry this forever.
Yeah. And like what I always like to tell people who are working through trauma, because very often what makes betrayal trauma so hard to recover from is that you often can't sever that relationship with that person easily. It's not like an acquaintance. An acquaintance who kind of lies to you or gives you the runaround about things, you're not going to be traumatized when they're dishonest with you. You're like, okay, whatever. Yeah, we'll figure that out later. It's not a big deal. But usually when it's impactful, it's someone who you can't just be like, see ya.
Yeah.
I'm done with this. It's a spouse, it's a parent, it's a child, even for some people who have like toxic relationships with adult children, another whole topic. But so it is painful, but when you're working on nurturing new relationships, very often you have to learn the difference between forgiveness and sweeping something under the rug. And those two things are very powerfully different when you're going through toxic relationship recovery. And I always say this, when you're learning forgiveness, and feel free to agree or disagree, you can forgive mistakes, but you can't forgive choices. Because a mistake is something like what you were saying. I was in my own world. I'm really sorry. Like, I didn't think. I got back to you too late and I just felt bad. I didn't want you to like be upset with me, right? Okay, mistake, we'll work through that. A choice is to go sleep with someone's husband. A choice is to leave your child home alone for hours and hours and hours when they're too young and just go do your own thing. That's a choice. A choice is leaving your kid with someone who's dangerous. A mistake is very different from that. Hey, I yelled a lot when I was a young parent because I didn't know any better. I'm working on it, right? There's nuance there. But I feel very strongly that to empower someone who has had repeated fractures of trust, you need to teach them what their tolerance level is for forgiveness and how they move forward. Too often, I feel like, especially because those relationships are hard to just piece out from, you tolerate a lot of crap and you tolerate a lot of things that are really intolerable and really kind of gross.
Yeah, and I think
So,
I
you
don't
know,
I don't you might disagree with me on this too. I don't know.
hmm
But like I also think like when you brought up forgiveness, it's like I think there's some things that are forgivable and there's things that aren't. And
yeah.
I definitely know me and you have talked about like narcissistic abuse and we had an episode of like
hmm
different kinds of abuse on here too. And I know like the lady we love that teaches that too. Like and I agree with her when she's like, sometimes you don't have to. I think forgiveness is something that comes from yourself. Like I forgive myself. I think that needs to be a phase of like this betrayal of like, because a lot of times we
Yeah.
get in the mindset of like, how did I let that happen to me? Why didn't I leave sooner? I'm so stupid. It's like, how do you have grace and empathy for yourself? And
Yeah.
can I forgive like the little things? But like, I believe people can be at peace with themselves being like, no, I think that person did a lot of shitty things. And like, I'm going to
Yeah.
move forward and be okay with myself and not forgiving them because I don't think they're good. I don't think they're a nice person. I don't think they're kind. I do think they maliciously did something.
Mhm.
And I think with the whole betrayal stuff of people are like, I'm gonna forgive somebody who completely betrayed me. People try so hard, I think, to get to that point where like I should be
Yeah,
once I forgive that person and let them
I'll
go,
be
I'll be
healed.
free. I don't agree with that.
I agree with you. I don't think that that's a thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times therapists, and I know a lot of other therapists will probably disagree with us, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it is like, well, let's practice forgiveness. And I think that's a lot in like religious things as well, like practice forgive other people. But like, what if you just okay not forgiving that person?
Right. That's okay too. I think there is an expectation that a victim of any kind of trauma has to also pick the moral higher ground and be the better person. And you don't always have to be. Not forgiving someone doesn't make you hateful. It means, hey, you've left a permanent mark on who I am as a person and my identity and the way I view myself and the way I view the world. And sorry, but like you took that from me. It's okay to have that honesty. And it is also okay to say, I forgive me for putting myself through you, but I don't forgive you for doing that to me and putting me in that position, right? That's powerful and healing too. There's not this like nirvana place where you have to say, I'm at peace and I forgive everyone for all things. No, that doesn't exist. And that's such a myth. Just like closure. Closure is such a myth. I
Right.
This is another one of those hills I will die on. You know, so many people don't agree. A lot of therapists don't agree with this either. Oh, you need to get closure. There's no such thing. Closure is what you make of it. It's the narrative that you create and the story that you can make peace with moving forward. Because someone who hurts you so badly and someone who betrays you, you know, they literally don't care about what your closure is. They don't care about what version of the story you need to hear. They'll tell you what you need to hear. And at the end of the day, you're not going to feel much better anyway. Well, how am I supposed to believe that person? They betrayed me so horribly and they're telling me this. I'm just supposed to accept it. Well, that doesn't feel good. So you're chasing something that just doesn't exist.
Right. I think that's like I agree with the with both of these and closure. It's like people want closure from people that hurt them, but the reality is that's never going to give you any type of I always say closure comes from within. Like are you at peace and are you looking at yourself and like having that grace that I just mentioned to process it and be okay with it more,
Yeah,
right? To close and be like, okay, I'm processed, I'm moving forward. But if you're like, I need this other person to help me understand why they did it,
right.
the reality is you're going to be chasing that forever, honey, because like a lot
Yeah,
of people either aren't conscious of it, don't care about it, or are going to fake it just to make you feel better when the reality is it doesn't help you anyway because I think that's like
mm-mm.
unfortunately humans being stuck on like if it makes sense to me I can close the chapter, so you
Yeah,
think getting the answer like I just have to know why they did it is going to close your chapter, but like are you really if they tell you oh because I just wanted to see you hurt, like is that really
yeah.
going to give you closure?
Right. Wow, thank you. That solves all my
Thank you
problems.
so much, you just wanted to see me hurt, now it makes sense to me.
Yeah, right. I'm at peace. Thanks a lot.
Right. It's
Yeah,
like you're going to end be in a never ending loop and want a different explanation because you want it to be the explanation that really makes sense to you.
right.
Sadly enough, a lot of this betrayal stuff we're talking about is like never going to make sense to you, and you being okay with it not making sense has to be part of like your healing.
Yeah. And also, you know, very often we obviously work with a lot of adults who are experiencing betrayal trauma in a relationship that's ongoing. And this is a perfect example of when we get the question, like, why do I look for people that are like this? Why do I make friends with people that are like this? And I'm attracted to people or I'm involved intimately with people who are like this, who repeatedly betray me and choose me second and abandon and reject me, right? This is what happens because this is familiar and we are chasing something that feels familiar and looking for closure of an earlier experience in your life that was left open and left hurtful. Okay, well, that was someone that hurt me as a child, you know, or I had an impactful experience with a friend in middle school and it just stuck with me, right? So now I'm with someone as my partner or as my best friend now who treats me like crap. And I don't know why I pick them. Well, because you're trying to reconcile something. And that's why, like, we get a lot of flack for saying, like, where does this feel familiar in your childhood? Because that it's relevant. Because it's relevant. And usually that's when the tears come. Like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about, Sally from seventh grade and how she used to bully me, you know, mercilessly and et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, okay, well, there it is.
Yeah.
So this is what happens. You've been rejected and abandoned by someone in some way, and now you're chasing that feeling of, well, let me be accepted by someone.
Yeah.
Let me be their first choice. I'm trying to find that somewhere. But the familiarity is comforting because you don't know any better. So sad.
It is sad. And like you're talking, and I think betrayal is one of those things that we say. We said it in like last week's episode
Yeah.
about like, love and stuff. Like sadly, it's like building yourself up so much where if betrayal would happen, it's like you'll handle it. Like like
Yeah.
I deserve that. It doesn't become this whole like why me and I need closure, right? It's just like
Yeah.
okay, this stinks. Not everyone's like this, but this happened and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
move forward because
Right.
people will unfortunately betray you. And there are people in the world that hurt you like that. And it's like at what levels, But I think what the hard part of the betrayal trauma stuff is just like all the other trauma stuff is your body's going to constantly in any relationship being like, can I trust this person because
Right.
I've gotten done dirty in the past.
But at the same time, and this is what's confusing, your body's alert and aware of that, but then you're also avoidant of like working through damaging behaviors. You're normalizing things that are unhealthy. And it's like, I can justify that, sure. I can justify anything that anybody else does because that's normal, right? But my body feels bad. So I know something's wrong, but I don't have the capacity to work through it right now. So I'm just going to say it's normal and give it time. And that's how you get stuck in the loop. And it's, there's no blame in that, but you have to kind of understand where that's coming from. It's not that you're a person who has poor judgment. It's that you're a person who has seen this before and it was normal for so long that now when you see it and your red flags kind of slowly go up a little bit, you're like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that right now. So this seems painful. I'm going to back up.
Right.
Let's just let it be. It's fine, right? And that's where we're perpetuating some of these behaviors from people. And ultimately, when you do get blindsided, because that's like a big neon light here for betrayal, for trauma. Very often you don't see it coming, even though you kind of should. Like all the warning signs were there, you drove past them really quickly, and then it happens, and you're like, my husband cheated on me. I knew it was coming, but I didn't want to see it. And now I feel very lost.
Right. Right. And I would say I've heard stories where maybe there was some subconscious stuff, but I've heard stories that are like super blindsiding where you're just like,
Yeah.
nope, actually there were no full actual signs. And
Right.
I just randomly, like one of my clients, when they remember just being like, Leslie, we were like, I thought we had the most perfect marriage. And I opened up his laptop one day while I was cooking just to send an email, and his email was open and I just saw everything. And I was like that kind of blinds, that kind of betrayal when you're not expecting
The
anything.
worst kind.
Yeah, it's I think the blind side that comes with it, like the worse the blind side, I feel like the bigger the betrayal feels.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that because you really do feel, especially if it's been something that's happened to you before and you feel safety and security in a relationship and then it hits you out of nowhere, you're like, no matter what I do, I'm going to be abandoned.
Yeah.
What more powerful reinforcement of a horrible core belief could that possibly be? Like, that's the worst of the worst, really.
And I think before we end, I feel like there's like another, what's the verbiage I want to use? I feel like I'm just trying to be like, what do my clients usually ask me? It's like, well, how do I work on betrayal trauma in my relationships when I'm terrified about being betrayed in all of them?
Well, first, you have to acknowledge what you're feeling. You have to be okay addressing the fact that you're having these feelings, right? I think it's important, like we always say, name them for what they are. You can't just be like, I'm sad all the time. You have to be like, I'm pissed and I'm angry and I'm afraid and I don't feel safe, because that will allow you to explore why. If you're like, well, I'm sad, that's okay. A lot of people are sad, but why? Where is this coming from? What does this feeling remind you of? What are you scared of for the future? What does your past explain in your mind? What does it tell you about what your future looks like? What are you afraid of doing because you've had experiences in the past, right? I mean, it is such a step-by-step process, but I think you just like need to be comfortable with the fact that your feelings are going to suck. That's like really it. And then you set boundaries with people. You don't know what trust looks like. You don't know what your threshold is for bullshit from people. Okay, then you set very firm limits. Like, okay, if you lie to me once, you're cut. Okay, that might seem really stringent, but okay, if maybe in relationships that you've had a history of infidelity, okay, well, you can't be out with your buddies until a certain time in the morning until I really build trust with you. Like whatever that boundary looks like, you need to stay in contact with me. I have to be able to tell you how I feel. I need to, whatever, You have to set boundaries with people and also not be afraid to say, this is my limit. If you violate my limit, you're out. That is okay. A lot of people feel so guilty about that. Oh, well, no, if a boundary creates discomfort with someone, it's because you need it. And I die on that hill too. Okay, well, you're not getting an easy version of me. I'm not the type of person that if I tell you, hey, text me when you get home, and you won't, that's what I need for my psyche, right? I've been in relationships where that's detrimental. It's hard for me not to have that contact. So if you're asking that of your partner and they're like consistently, I forgot, my phone died. Okay, cut.
Yeah.
It's very simple to build respect and build trust. Whatever that looks like. I'm not telling you guys what to do. But boundaries are important when you have a trust issue.
Right.
It does not mean control your partner. Let's not get off base here. It's not like, oh, let me follow your every move, right? But if phones are an issue, okay, please, when I'm having a conversation with you, can you talk to me and not be distracted? That could be a boundary.
And I think what you're saying too is communicating them, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people go into new relationships and don't really communicate, and then just have all these like internal expectations that like, oh, I don't want this to happen and this, I need this and I need this. And the reality is that person doesn't know what you've been through, or that person
No.
doesn't know. So it's like knowing your boundaries, but also communicating them. So it's like what you said was like great. Like, hey, like I'm actually in relationships not okay with you being out till 2 a.m.
Right.
And that's just for me. Like I'm not trying, like you said, I'm not trying to control you, but like, is that okay with you? Like, is that going to
Yeah.
ever be an issue if I'm like, hey, can you please come home by 11
Right.
o'clock, because I don't want to get in my head and I don't want to just go down this rabbit hole. And if that person's like, no, I'm going to want the freedom, then it's like, oh, okay, then now I know. But
Yeah.
that's going
Now
to
I
cause me
know.
more distress, or it ends up playing out and then you're like, okay, no.
It's fine. Right. Yeah, exactly. So communicate your needs, set your boundaries, and stick to them. You don't want a huge part of trauma recovery, I feel like, is making a boundary and respecting yourself enough to stick to it. Very often, it's so easy to be like, okay, this is my limit. And then I can't tell you how many times a client will say, yeah, but then I had a conversation with them. And then I realized I was no, you're being nothing. You're being nothing. Your boundary was reasonable. They talked you out of it. That doesn't build trust. So recognize patterns early, see what you're comfortable with, be open with your conversations with your partner, with your friend, with your parent. Relationships there's potential for repair. I believe that even with someone who has been horrible to you, if you are in the right mindset and it's important to you, some relationships you can repair. You can. I mean, that's why we have all of these couples therapy and we have family therapy, because there are some fractures that you can fix, but everyone has to be on board. It can't be, oh, well, I'm healing and you're not.
Yeah.
Then it's not going to work.
Right.
So, it's not like, oh, just cut off everyone, but it is a matter of for you to be respectful of yourself and for you to feel empowered and like you can trust people. That has to come with some price.
Right. And before we end, because we keep saying we're going to end and then we don't, I think it's important to know betrayal, a betrayal incident versus patterns. Like we always say that on certain episodes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to say, oh, I got betrayed this time and now I'm going to work with you on it, and now it's just okay, it's this pattern
Right.
and nothing's changing, but I'm now going to be in this like cycle of abuse basically with
Yep.
myself because I keep like asking for my needs and I keep communicating and the same thing keeps happening. At some point it has to be like, how are we gonna work on the betrayal? If
Right.
it was a one-time thing, right? No matter whether if it was severe like infidelity or a little lie, it's like, hey, from now on this doesn't happen. And after that, I think it's definitely like choices, like you mentioned, like, okay, I made a mistake, I lied to you this one time because I was whatever, but like now I'm conscious of it, and
Yeah.
the next time I won't let that happen. And then if
Right.
it happens again, now you're just choosing the same pattern over and over
Yeah.
again.
It's heavy.
All right, team.
Well, as always, feel free to give us your thoughts and share with us. We love to talk to you and hear from you. And I guess we'll see you on our next episode of We All Have Stuff.
Till next time, team.
Bye.